Tonight, at some point, you will probably wake up. Maybe at 2 a.m., maybe 3. You'll lie there for a while, mind turning over things you didn't ask it to think about. The conversation from last week, the email you didn't send, a vague, formless worry you can't quite name. You'll check your phone, see the time, feel a small stab of anxiety about how many hours of sleep you have left, and eventually drift back under, or not. If this happens to you regularly, there's a reasonable chance a doctor has a name for it. Sleep maintenance insomnia. A disorder. A dysfunction. Something to be treated, managed, medicated. Here's what that doctor almost certainly didn't tell you. For most of human history, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a disorder. It was the design. Until roughly 200 years ago, humans across almost every culture on Earth didn't sleep in one continuous block. They slept in two. The first sleep began at nightfall and lasted until somewhere around midnight. Then people woke up, naturally, without alarm, without distress, and remained awake for an hour or two. Then they went back to sleep until dawn. This second period was called, straightforwardly, the second sleep. The interval between them had a name too. In English, it was called the watch, or the watching hour. In French, dorval, a portmanteau of sleep and waking that doesn't translate cleanly into modern English, because the state it describes no longer has a recognizable cultural home. This pattern wasn't a quirk of a particular region or a particular era. Historical references to first sleep and second sleep appear in documents from ancient Greece, medieval Europe, pre-colonial Africa, indigenous North America, and early modern Asia. They appear in medical texts, in poetry, in court records, in personal diaries. The historian Roger Kirch spent 16 years researching sleep in pre-industrial societies and found over 500 references to segmented sleep across historical texts, enough to conclude that biphasic sleep wasn't an anomaly. It was the human norm. For thousands of years, nobody expected to sleep through the night, because nobody did. What happened during the watch? This is the part that stops you when you think about it. People got up, or they stayed in bed, in the particular drowsy half-lit state that Dorval describes. Not quite awake, not quite asleep, the mind loose and associative in a way it rarely achieves during ordinary waking hours. They prayed. Prayer books from a medieval period contain specific offices for the watching hour. Prayers designed not for morning or evening, but for this interstitial time, this gap in the dark. The night office, the vigil, the hours. They talked. In households where multiple people slept in the same space, which, as we've established, was most households, the watch was a time for conversation that the busyness of daylight didn't permit. Intimate conversation, the kind that happens in the dark, without the social performance that light seems to require. They had sex. Medical guide from the early modern period specifically recommended the watch as the optimal time for intercourse, on the grounds that both partners were relaxed, unhurried, and in a state of mental openness that the pressures of the day prevented. They thought. The physician and natural philosopher Thomas Willis, writing in the 17th century, noted that the watching hour was when people solved problems that had resisted daytime effort, when connections formed that the focused mind couldn't make, when dreams were close enough to the surface to be examined and remembered. Modern sleep researchers would later discover the neuroscience behind this observation. The brain state during the transition between first and second sleep is characterized by elevated prolactin levels and a quality of relaxed, diffuse cognition that is genuinely different from normal waking consciousness, closer to the hypnagogic state, more receptive, less defended. For thousands of years, humans had a built-in daily period of this state, a gap in the night designed, apparently by biology, for exactly the kind of thinking that the pressured, linear, task-focused waking mind resists. When it was light. Specifically, the progressive extension of artificial light into the evening hours, which began with widespread oil lamp adoption in the 18th century, accelerated with gas lighting in the early 19th, and was essentially completed by electrical light in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The mechanism was straightforward. Human sleep is regulated by melatonin, which the brain begins producing in response to darkness. In a pre-industrial world, darkness arrived at nightfall, reliably, and melatonin production followed. People became sleepy early, often by 8 or 9 p.m., and their first sleep began correspondingly early, which meant the watch arrived around midnight, and the second sleep was well underway by 1 or 2 a.m. When artificial light extended the usable evening, people stopped going to bed at nightfall. They stayed up later, reading, socializing, working by lamplight. The first sleep was pushed later. The watch moved to an inconvenient hour, and gradually, across a few generations, the cultural expectation shifted. You were supposed to sleep through the night. One continuous block. 8 hours. Any deviation was a problem. The biphasic pattern didn't disappear from human biology. It just became invisible, reframed as pathology rather than recognized as nature. In the 1990s, the psychiatrist Thomas Ware ran a series of experiments at the National Institute of Mental Health that would, in a more sensible world, have changed how we think about sleep entirely. Ware recruited healthy adult volunteers and kept them in controlled conditions with no artificial light. 14 hours of darkness per night, for a month. For the first 3 weeks, participants slept long and hard, apparently paying back a chronic sleep debt that most of them hadn't even known they were carrying. Then in the 4th week, something shifted. Their sleep restructured itself. They began waking naturally in the middle of the night, remaining quietly awake for 1 to 2 hours, and then sleeping again until morning. Their prolactin levels during the watch were elevated. The same pattern found in mammals that spend extended periods in darkness, and the same pattern that historical documents describe as the normal human experience of night. Ware described the state his participants entered during the watch as one of unusual calm. Not anxious wakefulness, not insomnia, quiet, resting alertness. Several participants said they hadn't experienced anything like it in their adult lives. They had, without knowing it, recovered an experience their ancestors had every night. The American sleep specialist Greg Jacobs has estimated that as many as a third of people seeking treatment for insomnia are specifically presenting with sleep maintenance insomnia, waking in the middle of the night and being unable to return to sleep. This is one of the most common sleep complaints in the modern world. Some portion of those people, nobody knows exactly what portion, are not experiencing a disorder. They are experiencing a biological rhythm that existed for the entire span of human prehistory, suddenly classified as dysfunction because it doesn't fit the schedule that artificial light made possible. We may be medicating a natural state, prescribing sleeping pills for a body, trying to do something it was built to do. It's worth sitting with that for a moment. There's a broader pattern here that your channel has been circling. The mirror changed how we saw ourselves. Anesthesia changed how we experienced pain. Industrial noise changed how we heard the world. Central heating changed who we shared space with. And electric light changed how we slept, quietly, over a few generations, without anyone deciding it should happen, without anyone understanding what was being replaced. In every case, the thing we gained was real. Clarity, comfort, safety, warmth, convenience. And in every case, the thing we lost was harder to name, because it was replaced so completely that the loss became invisible. You can't miss a state you've never been in. You can't grieve a rhythm you've never recognized as yours. The watching hour is still there. It still shows up reliably in the gap between 1 and 3 a.m., in the quiet dark of a house where everyone else is asleep. The mind loosens in exactly the way it always has. The thoughts surface that the day pushed under. We just learn to call it a problem and reach for our phones.